Hello there. Once again, you decide to take another revealing peek back into history.
What famous date shall I set it to today?
Once again, it's time for Throwback Thursday, a second chance to look at some truly awful podcasts. No, wait, a second chance to see how far Vicis and Interimo has come over the last 8 years. New episodes will be released pretty much weekly, but Thursdays I've reserved for throwbacks to see how far we've come. A lot of the information on here no longer applies, whether that be businesses or links that may not work anymore, so be advised of that. But again, I want to thank the patrons that we have at this time, though they may not have been here the first time these episodes were recorded. I am thanking them again because they're helping us move forward with our new episodes. And those are patrons such as at Lonely Bob, Big Al V, and Goldafish. In the meantime, I hope that you enjoy what you hear.
Well, welcome to Vicis and Interimo, 30 Minutes to Kill. I'm your host, Michael Mad Saxon Jones, and Lori is here with me. The episode today is going to be number 43. Today's movie review is The Mansion of Madness, or, what was the other one? Dr. Tar's
Torture Dungeon.
That's it. Yeah. We'll talk about that.
That's not
exactly what it is?
No, it's the Mansion of Madness.
Okay, well, that's the one we're going to talk about. I don't think we have too much to cover in our Laid to Rest segment. Normally we go over the things that we covered last podcast, but I think we covered everything since we went long. We'll do our movie review, and then we'll finish up with our Garbage In, Garbage Out segment, where we cover the things that we've seen and read this past week. So let's move on and get right into, well, let's see. Do we have anything for our Laid to Rest?
Not that I'm aware of.
Well, let's move on straight to the movie review then. Okay, for this movie review, it's going to be up to you to carry it this time, Lori.
What does that mean?
It means I was so spellbound by what I saw on the screen that I didn't have time to make notes. I mean, I made some notes, but I was just so... spellbound maybe isn't the right word, but it was pretty crazy.
I think that's a pretty fair way to say it.
Okay, well... I'm going to give you a second if you have a actual review, or not a review, but let's talk about what the movie was about. Do you have a synopsis for me?
I do. I was trying to decide which one I liked the best here.
Okay.
Woo! Okay. First, I have to ask you, the synopsis that I'm looking at on Internet Movie Database, these are written by just random people, right?
That's correct, as far as I know.
Okay, because this one is crazy. I like the Netflix one way better. It's way more accurate.
Okay.
Because, I mean, this one says a mysterious man is sent deep into the forest to investigate the bizarre behavior of the notorious Dr. Tar, which he's not even called Dr. Tar in the movie. What he stumbles upon is a doctor's torture dungeon, a hellish asylum completely cut off from civilization and presided over by the ultimate madman. Innocent people have been savagely chained, tortured, and stuck in glass cages, then forced to take part in gruesome games of ritual slaughter.
Wow.
What?
That's not the movie I watched.
Oh, you know what, though? Okay, maybe, I don't know. I was going to say I'm just reading this, so edit it out because I'm not going to use it. But actually... maybe you should let this ride, because this is a description more of how it was marketed in the U.S.
That's correct.
According to the extras that we viewed on there were some great extras that came with this disc.
Mm-hmm.
It was marketed in the U.S. as, what you said earlier, Dr. Tar's Torture Dungeon, and it was billed as a horror, and it was about, this synopsis would have fit it perfectly. So, of course, everybody ran out to see this new crazy horror film from Mexico, and this is so not what it was.
That's
it
true.
said, everybody was totally disappointed, and it was a totally different kind of movie. So,
well, I made sure to include the artwork on our Podomatic page.
yeah.
So if you go there and to listen to the podcast, you can also check it out there and see what the initial concept art was for the movie. Like you said, it was initially in America sent out for the drive-in circuit.
Right.
And it had just a completely different set of images going with it.
Well, and then but it does say here, in spite of the synopsis that somebody wrote for it, where did it go? Sorry, hold on. It has it under comedy, fantasy, horror, and mystery. So comedy, absolutely. Fantasy, oh yeah. Horror, we're going to have to talk about where the horror comes in, because it wasn't your typical, blood and guts, slaughter. In spite of what the synopsis said, it wasn't anything like that.
It wasn't a grindhouse type feature.
No, and it calls it a horror thriller. It wasn't a horror.
Wasn't really a thriller either, per se.
No.
But do you have another synopsis that maybe comes closer?
Okay, the Netflix synopsis, which I always favor these anyway, it says, Claude, Brook, Arthur Hansel, and Ellen Sherman star in this film inspired by writer Edgar Allan Poe about a journalist who enters the doors of the Mansion of Madness, a mysterious institution ruled by a thief named Raul Fragonard. Once there, the journalist realizes he may be in way over his head when he finds himself the lone voice of reason amidst a wild mess of insanity. But backing out now is not an option. Okay. Wild mess of insanity. That's it in a nutshell.
That's correct. You just finished reading the synopsis. And what did you think of this film visually? I'm going to say right now that this isn't for typical horror fans. If you're looking for gore or, well, no, that's selling it short. If you're looking for a scary story, this is not it. It was interesting, like you said, watching the extras with this, because they had a large discussion on this director, and I'm not going to be able to pronounce his name, so hopefully you'll help us out.
Yes, you are. Juan Lopez Moctezuma.
Moctezuma, okay. And it turns out that it was a personal hero of Guillermo del Toro.
Yes.
And so there were a lot of interesting facts that he shared in the extras. This film, like you said earlier, wasn't really well received for a lot of reasons, mainly because they couldn't really quantify where it fit. It wasn't made to be a commercial success. It wasn't necessarily containing deep social commentary, though it did in the filmmaker's eyes. Does that make sense?
It does to me.
Okay, well, I guess since you
Did you want to talk about the movie first before we go too deep into Moctezuma and what he was trying to do?
Okay.
Because I found that was so interesting. I mean, just from the standpoint of Mexico's history of cinema, I mean, it's a really important film, I feel. But I mean, I feel like we're doing this backwards.
Okay. Well, let's get back to the movie then.
Yes.
Like I said, this isn't for your typical horror fan. It's not a B-movie, gory, grindhouse type film, like we said, even though it apparently was marketed that and judging based solely on the artwork for the American poster of Dr. Tar's Torture Dungeon. Yeah, it wasn't that kind of movie.
No, it was likened to a Fellini film. So if people out there are familiar with Fellini at all.
Right.
But it was very, I hate the term artsy.
Avant-garde?
Very avant-garde, yes. Very, very avant-garde, for sure. But so it starts out with our hero, the journalist, who's returned to France, because it's supposed to be taking place in France. he wants to go home, and well, for what reason did he? They give a little bit of background about him, which doesn't really matter. I thought it was going to play a more important role in the movie for some reason because they talked about it, but how his dad was accused of killing his mother and all this and that, so he had gone to live in South America because his father was institutionalized or something. But all of that, I guess, didn't even matter.
It just set it up as to why he would be interested in going to the asylum, I guess.
Right. Yeah, I guess that's it. So he's working in South America as a journalist, and he talks his, and of course this is all just background, so you don't get to see this in the film. It starts where he's actually in the carriage riding through the woods, and he's almost to the Mansion of Madness. I mean, he's already almost there. So the beginning, you get a little bit of history real fast in the beginning, but the story starts up pretty quickly. He gets there, and you know right away something's very wrong. But his name is LeBlanc, and he goes with an old school friend of his, right? Mm-hmm. From when he lived in France when he was a boy. Mm-hmm. His childhood friend goes with him, and a couple other people accompany them, the coach driver and whatever. Yeah. But all of that aside, so a small little group of them go there, and then everything just kind of goes really wacky.
Well, you get the feeling pretty much as soon as you see it that it's definitely the inmates that are in charge of the asylum there. The whole time, the person that's the imposter, pretending to be running the hospital, spends a majority of the intro of the film there discussing his wonderful system that he has, where they indulge each of the lunatics with their fantasies, and there is no chastising of people or no corporal punishment of any sort. They simply let them do what they like.
He had some of the best lines, and that was what I wrote a note here somewhere. I wrote so many notes for this movie, it's not even funny. There was so many things to talk about. Seriously.
Yeah.
But it seemed like this movie was a lot of things to look at. Like visually, it was almost like this monologue that he was giving a tour to the journalist. He was giving him a tour of the place, and I think his words were coming directly out of the story that Edgar Allan Poe wrote. Mm-hmm. But it was like there was visual things going on in the foreground while they're way off in the background just walking, or there was just a lot given to you for your eyes to grab onto.
Right.
Like the colors and the movement of people running back and forth, and you know, it's an insane asylum, of course, so they really had fun with the colors and the sounds and what they had the people doing.
Well, I think we're lucky in that sense because the copy that we got was a restored copy. It's the newest release from
That's right.
Mondo Macabro.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of it, they said, had been restored. The initial film was so badly damaged that the scenes were virtually impossible to see.
Wow.
So it does suffer the quality a little bit, but you do get to see a lot of these images. And I think you said that they pretty much look like a painting.
Oh, yeah. There were a couple scenes there that were they were so cool because it was real black all around the edges with just a real bright spot right in the middle of a scene and it reminded me of the, I can't think of the name of the event. Shame on me. Where you can go and look at the living artwork, you know, and they recreate famous paintings and sculpture on stage.
Right.
That's what this looked like to me. And there would be dialogue or a monologue going on, but you wouldn't get to see them talking. It would be showing you something different. And it was cool. It was just really beautiful the way it was done. That's where the term artsy came in, artistic. And, it was visually, it was not a boring movie. Actually, there was nothing boring about it for me.
Okay. So. Well, I enjoyed it too. One of the things that I sort of, if you're having trouble kind of visualizing what we're talking about, if you've ever seen the movie Caligula, though, and you know what his court was like, Certainly not as lurid as some of the scenes out of...
I was going to say, I'm not sure that's a good description.
But I'm thinking about his, the dining scene and stuff where he just had freaks around him and so on. The same case in this movie where the lunatics were allowed to do whatever they liked. And so he just held court in this kind of, well, it was an insane asylum, so he just held court there. So I'm talking about those type of scenes being...
Yeah. And the way that the sets were decorated and the costumes that were used, there was just so much, I mean, the action and the people aside, because there was a lot of people and wacky things going on to look at. But if you looked beyond that and actually looked at the scene, the scenery, and the, gosh, I'm having trouble here. Sorry.
It's okay. I'll edit out the pauses.
Edit this out, please. Yeah. No, edit out more than that. Me going, duh, duh. There were scenes, a lot of scenes indoors in rooms, and like I couldn't help but notice the wallpaper, and like everything just looked a little off when before you still think you're maybe talking to this Dr. Maillard. You don't know yet that the lunatics have taken over the asylum. You kind of get the idea, but everything is just a little bit wrong and unkempt and not kept up at all. The wallpaper's a little funky looking.
That bedroom was quite disturbing.
Lots of cobwebs and like animal skins hanging on the wall. That one, I was like, what is with the... I wanted to just pause the movie so I could really absorb the decorations and the surrounding of the sets. I mean, forget the people. But that one room, you told me that it looked like a crocodile skin or something, and that is exactly what I think it was.
Yeah.
But like just this random, like, funky looking reptilian skin or something stuck to this wall. There was just a lot of really unsettling, I think that's the word I'm looking for. Everything was just a little unsettling, or a lot unsettling.
Definitely. I think this is a movie that you probably wouldn't want to enjoy during being in an altered state. Or maybe you would. I don't know.
No.
But yeah, unsettling.
You might not ever come back.
Unsettling is definitely...
Yes, unsettling. You were going to talk about the room with all the white, the room that LeBlanc he's actually drugged and thrown in a room. Because obviously he wants to leave when he realizes how crazy everything is. But yeah, what about that room that they gave him to stay in?
That was just, like you said, that was just quite disturbing. It was, I'm not sure whether those were supposed to be, I mean, I didn't think they were cobwebs, but they were bandages that just were strung up, and it just very unsettling. So,
and the whole bed looked like it was made out of just these. I know we're like, what is that, mummy wraps? It looks like a mummy went crazy in there and
Exploded.
lost all of its. Yeah, but I think it was symbolic. I mean, it looked like a web. I mean, he was not going anywhere. He was stuck there. So, I mean, this movie is so full of symbolism.
Right.
Yeah. It's a cool movie. Now, so Dr. Maillard, you said he had a system of...
the system of soothing.
I was going to say, you remember what it was called, right?
Yep.
It was actually the soothing system of Dr. Maillard is what he called it.
Yep.
Yes.
And it...
I'm sorry. I'm thinking of the scene where they go way down to the dungeon. It's quite a disturbing image, actually, because you see that all of the people all of the patients, they're just kind of running around loose and doing their own thing. But then as each floor, you go lower underneath the building, and they're a little more restrained, and you find out later that, a lot of the people that ran the hospital and worked there were actually in cages. But you get way to the bottom, and that man he looks like Christ on the cross, and scene is just black, and the light is on this old man who is tied to this cross, and he's just, oh my gosh, he's so thin from not eating, and he's it's just such a disturbing image. And Dr. Maillard just like chucks a piece of bread at him or something. Oh, here's your bread. Oh, you'll get another piece tomorrow. Ha, ha, ha. Like he thinks it's just funny and normal and whatever. And when the journalist says something about, this is cruel. I don't see how this is helpful or whatever. And Dr. Maillard says, well, blame it on the less soothing part of my soothing system. It was so fun. There was just the funniest lines in there. Well, you don't know whether to be disturbed and upset but then the comedy comes in.
The other place the comedy came in absolutely was the music.
Oh my gosh.
That almost came like directly from a Warner Brothers soundtrack, I want to say, just because of the silly music effects that they used on there. One other thing you said about descending through the different levels, more than once Dante is referenced, definitely.
Yes, well, the man was down there quoting Dante, was he not?
Definitely.
Yeah, and I was like, what is going on? I wanted to know more about this, what was going on here, but it just kind of ended abruptly. But yeah, there had to be a reason why that scene was put in there, and it had to really mean something.
Yeah.
So I wish I would like to find more material actually on this movie and see what.
The other thing would be to go to the actual source material, the Edgar Allan Poe story, which is called The System of Dr. Tar and Professor Feather.
Right.
And for as much as they said that this was a loose adaptation of it, I think they did go. Like you mentioned, I think they did go out of their way to quote directly from it. I mean, the story probably does not follow it because of the time period that it was set in and such. But there were some lines out of there that I believe were word for word out of the story. And with regards to the historical background, the story was written by Poe initially when care for the insane was a highly political issue. And I know studying your psychology stuff, we're learning about that and how that at certain points doctors went in there and stopped treating them like criminals and such, despite the fact that a lot of people were getting acquittals due to being declared criminally insane. I think it's also interesting to note that insane is strictly... did you say it's strictly a legal term at this point?
Oh, now, yeah.
Nowadays.
The term, you don't say somebody is insane but it's used in legal terms, of course, insanity plea or guilty of reason of insanity. That's where the term is used. It's not really used in a clinical sense anymore.
Right.
It's not supposed to be anyway. It's just not PC.
Oh, yes, you got to be PC. But at any rate, this...
there is better words for it, because, insane, what is that anyway?
This movie.
Okay, yeah.
But
I wrote so many things. Like as you're talking, I'm looking at the sheet of stuff, and I'm like, oh my god, look at all this stuff I wrote down about it.
Did it? I was going to say something about you maybe needing to make a sanity check roll before you. If anybody's played Call of Cthulhu, they know what that is. You may want to make one of those before you actually sit down to watch the movie. But yeah, anyhow, getting back to my point there, which was this story, the Edgar Allan Poe story, which the movie was taken from, it was written during a time when the asylums were being scrutinized more closely.
Yes.
And so on. So, what did you want to say, if you haven't come across anything else yet? What did you want to say about the director?
Oh, gosh. Yeah, that's a whole nother thing. He just had a really interesting history.
Well, like you said, I think we learned a lot about Mexican cinema at the time, too, so that was interesting.
Yes, in the 70s, Guillermo del Toro called it a time capsule of 70s horror film in Mexico. And I thought that was interesting because he said after that it really changed and film was unionized and, movies weren't funded. This one was actually not funded anyway. I mean, he used a lot of his own money to do this movie. Moctezuma did. And the films that were coming out in the 70s horror genre, it even said, I mean, they weren't well received anywhere, not even in Mexico.
Mm-hmm.
Like, the people just weren't ready for that sort of thing. A lot of them went against the Catholic Church, and I think there was really a lot of political and religious statements in there. I mean, actually, I want to see all of Moctezuma's films. And it said, you know, he made all of his films really out of the mainstream. That way he could do whatever he wanted with them. He didn't accept funding from the government or from any outside sources. And I thought it was really interesting that he was involved with a couple of other guys whose names I don't remember, but I guess it doesn't matter at this point, since we're focusing on him and his movies. He was involved in what they called panic theater. And it was, you know, you would actually go to the theater and watch these scenes played out on stage that were just like chaotic. And they called it a whirlpool of emotion. And they said that he used what he learned working at the Panic Theater. He used everything he learned there to create these movies. And I mean, that says it, a whirlpool of emotion. That so says it perfect. And it says, you know, it was meant to break down your perceptions. And wow, it breaks down more than that. It breaks you down in many ways. But that's what, I mean, that's what was so cool about it. Cause I was watching this thing and, I had written, I was looking at my notes here. I almost am tempted to read exactly how I wrote them because it's kind of funny, but I won't. Well, okay, I will. Towards the end of the film, I put down some little notes because I was starting to feel like, almost like I'd had enough of it.
Mm-hmm.
Because everything kind of comes to a head and he's holding court, this Dr. Maillard, you know, who you find out he's an imposter and you don't know what's going to happen, and all of the patients are all around him and everybody's playing these crazy instruments made out of animal bones and pieces, and there's, you know, the guy's got a doll head on his head, and there's lots of use of like dead birds and feathers. And at that one point, he picks up this giant stuffed sea turtle.
Mm-hmm.
He's going to throw it at so like taxidermy gone crazy. So I'm looking at all this stuff, and then I wrote, this is exactly what I wrote: weird dance bit with 3 guys wearing feathers, horrible screeching. I'm done with the craziness. Make it stop. And then I wrote, hey, it did. So those are my notes word for word.
Okay.
But it was at that point that I realized this is in fact a horror movie, because I watch so many horror movies and they don't do anything for me anymore. I want to be, and I don't mean, you know, I want the story. I want something to affect me in some way.
Mm-hmm.
I don't mean
Other
just
than just
blood
being
and
grossed
gut.
out.
That's
Right.
just ridiculous.
Right.
Yeah, that's just stupid. And actually, I have something to say about that in a second. But anyway, yeah, that's when I realized this is indeed a horror, because it was making me nervous, and like I was starting to get kind of edgy and having a little bit of anxiety, and the sounds and the instruments and the people and the chanting and those bird guys and I was just like, what the heck? It's too much. Like it was horror. It was horror. Cause if I'd have been there in that room, I'd have had to run out screaming.
Okay.
I mean, it was indeed horror.
Cool.
Maybe I sound crazy. I don't know.
Maybe. Now, what were you going to say? You had something else to say. You said about the...
Oh, with blood and guts.
Right.
I was just going to say that kind of thing. I used to really enjoy the blood and gut aspect in high school. And then several of my high school friends got into special effects.
Mm-hmm.
And I got to see how lots of these things were made with the latex, and they were making molds and making guts and stuff out of, and it was so lifelike looking, but it's so ridiculous when you see how it's done.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not a big like, oh my gosh, it was so gory and it was cool, because I don't need that sort of thing in my movies.
Okay.
I just don't really enjoy that, and I don't know, you can tell when it's done badly, and anyway, that has nothing to do with this movie.
Okay.
But yeah, this was horror, because yeah, it evoked so many emotions inside me and made me feel really uncomfortable, and my notes, I'm done with the craziness, make it stop. That says it right there.
So what would you give this for a rating?
Oh my gosh. Okay. For the horror fan who just wants to check out a horror movie, I would rate it super low because that's not what it is.
Okay.
As a very important film in Mexico's cinema history, oh man, this thing's a 10.
Wow.
It is.
Okay.
Yeah. It's so wild and wacky and, as you said, avant-garde. And yeah, I'm actually looking forward to seeing it again.
Okay.
And I want to see everything that this man made before he died.
Okay.
We got to see a couple previews for a couple of his other movies, and actually one of them was quite bloody. It said he was a very big fan of vampire stories, and he did a really disturbing looking film with a lot of blood. And I think they could probably do anything they wanted.
Right.
You know, I don't think there were restrictions, really.
Was that a la carte? I know that was one of the other movies he did.
That was one of them.
Yeah.
But yeah, he really did some wild movies. Oh. And this one I think was probably the least, horror in the sense of, you know, blood and all that, because it was just kind of, you didn't get the feeling that anyone was very dangerous in this movie. They were crazy, but you could probably talk yourself out of it, you know?
Right.
Some of his other films look like, you know, vampires or some other, you're dealing with evil spirits, demons, whatever, possession. You might not come out of it. So I think his other movies were probably more scary. But, yeah, I really enjoyed this movie a lot.
Okay. Yeah. I'm torn. I'm gonna probably mirror what you said as far as if you're looking for just a straight horror type movie, you're looking in the wrong spot. This was maybe a 2 or a 3 probably. I don't know if I'm gonna go with a 10, but if you're looking for something avant-garde, I'm gonna say this is probably an 8 for me.
Okay.
Going a little bit higher, maybe. Like I said, just the first time I saw it, I couldn't even make notes. I was riveted to see what was going on. So
yeah,
that's pretty much it.
It's pretty wacky. Yeah. I'm so hung up on it just being such an important film in history it sounded like it's just such the perfect example of that type of work in the 70s in Mexico. So I think, it's a 10 for me.
Okay. Well, we're going long on this one. I didn't expect to, but
oh my gosh. You want to talk for 5 more hours about it? Because we could go scene by scene.
No, I think I'm going to pass, and I think our listeners will probably pass too at this point. At this point, you're either going to check it out or you're not. So
yeah, I'm sorry, everybody.
That's okay.
Well, a couple weeks back. Well, no, I won't say that. Never mind.
Okay. So, moving on, let's,
we have to?
Yes, we do. Let's move on and say one of the places you can find us is at lapodcasters.com. Another place you can find us is pennycult.com. And as always, we are on hillbillyads.com. So, having said that, let's move on to our garbage in, garbage out segment.
Don't you know that we can go the horizontal? We can go the vertical too. We gonna make a couch potato out of you. That's what we gonna do now. Don't change the channel.
Okay, garbage in, garbage out. What do you have for us, Lori?
Wow, I don't know.
Okay.
We almost watched a couple different movies this week, but we didn't watch them.
Well, I actually cheated a little bit and watched, Big Trouble in Little China.
Oh.
I caught a little bit of that while I was studying your stats. Yeah. So, great movie. It's a fun one to throw on anytime. There's so much going on in there. I think that's the one that, if you listen to the commentary with John Carpenter and Kurt Russell, I think they talk about every other movie that they did together other than Big Trouble in Little China. There may be a few tidbits here and there, but they seem to have had a great time working together, and it was a great film. Lots of fun.
Yeah, that was one I always loved.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, when it came out when it was on HBO when we were younger. Oh my god. Every afternoon. Yes, it's on again. Gotta watch it. Yes.
Good stuff. Lots of schoolwork for you. That's pretty much what it's going to be most of the days, most of the weeks now, huh?
Yes.
Yep.
We watched, let's talk about The Gates real quick.
Okay.
How's that going for you?
It's going all right.
I hate to admit it. I like The Gates. I look forward to watching it every week.
Okay.
Even after telling Jason when he was on our show that it was like Dawson's Creek meets, what was it, Desperate Housewives meets True Blood or whatever.
Yeah.
It still is kind of like that, but it's gotten so much better.
Well, I think they're probably going to wrap up their season pretty soon, so they're probably trying to build it to a head.
Yeah, they're doing a good job, I think. The story's gotten a lot heavier and more serious and dark, which it was just like fluff. The first 3 or 4 weeks, it was just fluff. And I was like, okay, something better happen that's serious pretty soon, because I don't care.
Well, after the killing of a couple of characters in there, not necessarily main characters, and maybe main characters, it did get, definitely did get better.
Yes.
Yeah.
I love it.
So, on my front here, I've been just studying magic, doing my magic. I'm getting ready for, a gig here coming up in a little while, so I'm looking forward to doing that. That's going to be fun. Get to do some stand-up magic and some walk-around, so that should be fun. How many more times can I say that's fun?
I don't know. You obviously really think it's fun, though.
I really do enjoy it.
I know.
Yeah.
I live with you.
Everything. So, at any rate...
That's why I don't get my studying done. You're like, hey, look at this. Here, take a card. What?
Well, let's move on to our laid to... Well, no. I was going to say, we didn't do a laid to rest. We are going to cover something that would have normally been covered in laid to rest, because we actually heard back from Al. Al put up something on the Vicis and Interimo Facebook page, and he gave us the movies that were most influential for him. And though they seem to be stretched out a little bit, I was looking for kind of too close to the same decade. But he said Aliens and The Matrix were 2 of his best ever from around when he graduated. So
excellent films.
Definitely. Absolutely.
Yes.
And he had quite a bit more to say about Terminator, Aliens, and so on. So if you want to see that, look for us on Facebook and join us there.
Yeah.
What is your best ever? You don't have a best ever.
Oh. Yeah, I don't. I'm sorry.
That's fine. Your homework from last week, though, was what was another movie from the 80s that was seminal in your development?
Seminal in my development?
Yeah.
I need to pick 2 different ones then. That's crazy.
Okay, then very influential.
Well, I don't even know about that, but 2 of my favorites that I loved, there's so many good ones in the 80s. You don't know how hard this was for me. But, again, I'm going to say Empire of the Sun. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's been my favorite movie for I don't know how many years. Mm-hmm. It's still in probably my top, it's in my top 10. It's fallen, through the years as movies come out, it's gotten bumped down a couple times.
Right.
Watchmen came out and knocked everything down a notch, because that's my number 1. Okay. But back to the 80s, mm-hmm. Legend is my other one.
Ah, okay.
I saw Legend on my 16th birthday.
Ah.
And I loved it, and I still totally love it.
Okay.
Yes, Legend.
Legend. So Legend and Empire of the Sun.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I already gave my 2 last week, so now I'm going to move on to the 90s. And...
Oh, no.
Ironically...
I'm not ready.
That's okay. You got your homework for next week now.
Oh, jeez. I'm always 1 decade behind you.
You always are.
Give me a break.
That's because you're younger than me. Anyhow, the movies that I have for the 90s actually go back further to the 80s and are Heavy Metal and The Wall. I had recently moved out here to LA in the late 80s, early 90s, and I had, hypothetically speaking, somebody that I know may have acquired a copy of Heavy Metal long before it was available for purchase on DVD, hypothetically. And so I was able to watch that on actually beta. So anyhow, that was a movie that I saw a number of times that was influential for me during the 90s, despite it being coming out in 86.
Okay, I was going to say that was definitely an 80s movie.
Definitely.
Because I remember everyone talking about it in high school.
Right. And The Wall was another movie that I
couldn't help but plug it into IMDb really quick, and it says 1981.
81, really?
Yes.
I said 86. I guess that wasn't that late. But 81, I didn't realize it was that early. But
That's crazy.
All right, so that was for me in the 90s. Like I said, there was no way to get it. It wasn't out on DVD. It wasn't out on VHS yet. So I was able to enjoy that. But anyhow.
That's interesting because I'm wondering because I didn't hear about heavy metal until I was in high school. And, of course, my heavy metal friends were the ones that saw it and thought it was so cool and told me about it. But that was in high school. So that was mid-late 80s. So it's interesting that, you're saying that. I wonder if that's when it came out on beta and that's when everybody got to really see it.
Well, I don't know if it was that. I know it was available, I believe, on Laserdisc. So, for you young kids that don't know what the heck we're talking about, I guess we'll just move on from there. But anyhow.
You can still buy Laserdiscs on eBay. I saw them.
Yes, you can.
Anyway, sorry.
So anyhow, that's it. And I actually do have a best ever for this week.
And I have a question.
Okay.
Do we have can we post the trailer for this week's movie?
If it's out there, I'll find it.
Because, we've got to find this thing because I want anyone that even found this episode halfway interesting, I want them to at least see if not rent it, because it is on Netflix. Mm-hmm. So it's available for rent. Okay. I highly recommend it if you're interested in that sort of thing. But I would love to show the trailer because the trailer was a really good example
indication of what it was. Yeah,
oh yes.
Definitely.
Oh yeah. It is not a misleading trailer at all. It's crazy and wacky, and that's what you're going to get.
Okay. And since Mondo Machabro brought these films out, these and a few other ones, you're probably going to have a relatively easy time getting it.
Yeah.
Thinking, like you said, if it's on Netflix, that's always great, easy.
Yes.
My best ever.
Yes.
My brother-in-law Sean.
Yes.
Is the best audience member ever. For Magic.
For Magic,
absolutely. Yeah. I just got to throw that out there and stuff.
All right.
I love performing for anybody and stuff, but he gives me the best responses and stuff, so he's a favorite of mine to perform for. So there you go. All right. Moving on. You can always get in contact with us directly by emailing me at madsaxon. That's MADSAXXON. madsaxon@yahoo.com. Or you can look for us on Facebook or just punch Vicis and Interimo in Google or whatever. You should find us a number of places. That's VICISINTERIMO. So do that or just friend me on Facebook, S. Michael Jones. So any closing thoughts?
I don't think so.
All right. Well, we will continue on with, I don't know what it's going to be, but it's going to be something crazy themed as far as the music. All this episode has been about being crazy. So there you go.
Yeah.
Enjoy. I hope I hope you folks join us again next week.